So design thinking is about using the right side of the brain. If you look at a human brain, the human brain is one of the most complicated organs, and it performs many complex processing. The brain can be divided into two halves, the left side and the right side. Well, the two sides have completely different characteristics. For example, the left side of the brain helps being efficient and having things in control, while the right side of the brain helps dealing with ambiguity. So if you look at it, the left side of the brain is very rules driven, while the right side of the brain is very pattern driven. Rules is more of, step one you do this, step two you do this, take a decision, go back, go forward, this is how. Pattern driven is the rules are actually created through these patterns. The left side of the brain is sequential processing. The right side of the brain is holistic processing. By sequential processing, we do one step at a time. Activity 1, then we go to activity 2, and then we proceed further. Holistic processing is we gauge everything holistically. What are the different tasks? What is the needs? And then before we dwell into the details. So design thinking is more about holistic processing. The right side of the brain is more about holistic processing. The left side of the brain is very analytical in nature, detailed oriented and numerical. Right side of the brain is extremely superficial and sketchy. It doesn't get into the details. The left side of the brain focuses on getting things right, focuses on success. The right side of the brain is more evolving in nature. It doesn't focus more on success. So design thinking, as you can see, is more about using the right side of the brain where there is ambiguity, there is creativity, and there is no focus on getting it right always and every time, to begin with. So when you see design thinking is so radically different from the conventional style, so let's try and define what is conventional style of working at. A conventional thinking is a methodology to arrive at a definitive solution based on proven techniques, often leveraging data from the past. So a conventional method, addresses the problem, and at the same time, forces one to be efficient and be more control oriented. So this is probably used for techniques, used for scenarios where the process has been established, the rules are clearly defined, and the focus is purely on being efficient and gaining control over each step. Things like a playbook is defined, we know what needs to be done, so let's do it again and again repetitively to get things done and to be successful. So that's conventional thinking. A typical conventional thinking mindset expects one to be perfect, expects perfection. You should avoid failure and looking foolish before others. It requires a fixed mindset, and a success formula has been created. Let's focus on applying the same success formula for similar problems everywhere. Eliminate uncertainty. Very focused on growth centric. What are my returns on investment? Aims for control and efficiency. Statistical analysis of data to get insights and be more effective and efficient going forward. So an organizational working style is usually more conventional. In the sense, whatever we do, say project management, business analysis, these are tried and tested techniques. There are frameworks available in the market. So people do not think, in a conventional thinking mindset, where the focus of the organization is more on getting the maximum value return on investment. So conventional thinking mindset usually works, and predominantly 99% of an organization's focus is on conventional thinking, because the business's motive is to create value and make more money. So nothing wrong with it. So, but that's conventional thinking. While design thinking, as you can see, is radically different. We are talking about pattern driven. We are talking about holistic processing. We are talking about superficial sketch, focus on evolving. Be ready to accept failures. There's no standard rules. Nobody really knows whether it's right or wrong. But it gives you new opportunities as we go forward. So not always design thinking can be used not all situations. A conventional approach to problem solving is probably more suited if there is very few human beings or no human beings involved in the problem. For example, a manufacturing assembly line, machineries, where to locate, process orientation, technology orientation. There is not much focus for design thinking. Whereas if the problem that you're trying to solve has lots of human interaction and requires a deeper understanding of people, then design thinking is more appropriate. There are very limited factors and attributes very clearly defined, then conventional mode. Too many factors and they are very interdependent on each other, then design thinking is more appropriate. Where there is past data that can be used to predict the future, then it's conventional approach. Where past data is not likely to help because we are getting into newer territories of trying to solve problems, then design thinking is more appropriate. Hope it gives a good idea of what is design thinking. Now, how is it different from conventional approach, and all right. So let's go forward a little bit. So let's see how design thinking works. So what you see on the screen now is a very famous framework created by the D School from the Stanford University. This is a very simple and a very powerful framework, as I said before, for anyone who would like to understand design thinking. And there are 5 phases. Start with empathize, then define, then ideate, then prototype, and finally test. Straightforward 5 phases, one by one. So the first phase is called the empathize phase. Design thinking, as we said, is about creating customer value or creating wow in the minds of the consumers. So understanding the consumer's needs is the first phase, and it is the most critical phase in design thinking. What we mean by empathize, or what it means by empathize, is to go beyond the surface level needs of the consumers. We'll see more about it as we go forward. Hence the word empathize. Now you will have to really feel for the customer how the customer or the consumer, he or she, is likely to be feeling. You have to identify their interests, frustrations, preferences, aspirations as closely as possible. It's not just the words taken from the customers, or the activities, or just a research work. This can actually be achieved only by close observation of consumers, or actually by doing things with them. A simple survey will not work. So that's the first phase. Once empathize is done, a lot of data about the consumer's needs are collected. The next step is to define the problem statement. This phase, the data is collected and synthesized. The data collected from the empathize phase is synthesized, and a problem statement is defined. This problem statement has to be fairly broad in context so that it is more applicable for a design challenge. So we saw it. It has to be broader in context, ambiguous, more ambiguous, to trigger creativity in the minds of participants who are part of the design challenge. After the define phase, the third phase is the ideate phase. This phase, the focus is on creating ideas to solve the problem. There are multiple techniques that could be available in the designer's toolkit. We'll see some of the techniques as well as we go forward at a high level. But the focus here is to generate ideas of how to solve this problem. Again, a very important part of design thinking is something where, though we have defined these 5 phases as sequential, it's very easy to teach someone, to help understand someone, to help understand the process behind design thinking. Technically, it's not as linear as this. From ideate, people can always go back to the empathize phase. They can always go back to consumers. There is a lot of jumping that can go back and forth across these. So the ideate phase should never be shy of sharing your ideas with your consumers, because you are not trying to show to the consumers the power of your idea. What we're trying to show here is, what we're trying to do or achieve here is to come up with an idea that will actually create wow in the minds of the consumers. So even though you are in the ideate phase, if there is a potential opportunity for you to go back to the consumers, share the ideas, get feedback, and improvise, don't feel bad about doing it, because it's anti-control oriented. You can fail. It's not about efficiency. It's not about completing things in detail. After the ideate phase is the prototype phase. So once the ideas are created, some of the ideas which pass or really solve the needs of the consumers are taken towards the prototype, which is the next phase. In this phase, as the name defines, prototype is about creating a very simple model or a very preliminary model of a solution. Sometimes they actually say a prototype of a process can even be a skit to show how it will act in a real life scenario, rather than defining something in a piece of paper through a process. You can even do a skit to show how it will be effective, or to even see for yourself as designers of how it would be. So that's a prototype phase. The focus again is not on creating a complete concrete product. The idea is to do a very preliminary model to show how it works with minimum investment and be open for critique. After the prototype phase, the fifth phase is the test phase. So here is where this is where definitely we'll have to put a prototype to test before the consumers understand their reactions, understand their behavior, and see how it can be improvised going forward. If statistically about 80% of the or even more than that of the prototypes fail, and that's how it is in design thinking, because it's all about evaluating and creating newer opportunities. So do not get stuck with your idea for a longer time. Fail fast, fail cheap. The objective is to see if it will really meet the consumer's needs. So if something is not working, maybe don't chuck it, but probably park it for future examination. You will never know as technology evolves or more mature processes come in place. Maybe it becomes easier to put in use. So none of the ideas get deleted from the system. They are more of getting parked for future implementation. This at a very high level is what is design thinking. So 5 phases, very simple framework created by the D School from Stanford University. The 5 phases: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test. And as you can see, in each and every phase, the focus is again back on the consumer's needs. What can be done to create a wow in the minds of the consumers? Does it make sense so far to everyone? Can we proceed? Probably take it as a yes. I would like to take a minute again here to demystify the two terms, innovation and design thinking, which is most commonly used in the industry, sometimes even interused one for the other. So innovation's definition theoretically is the process of translating an idea into a solution at commercial scale that creates value for which customers will pay. Design thinking, I'll quickly read the definition. Design thinking is the process of identifying the real needs of a consumer and developing a solution that wows users. So we saw the design thinking framework. Design thinking ends at the prototype testing phase. Design thinking doesn't talk about commercializing a solution or scaling a solution into a manufacturing or an assembly line process or into a full-fledged process so that you can start selling it into a market. While innovation is also about implementation. Design thinking is not about implementation or execution. Innovation is also about process. It can also be about technology. While design thinking is pure customer focused. And it's not just customer focused superficially, it's about customer empathy, getting beyond the needs, surface level needs of the consumers. So the differences between design thinking and innovation is design thinking focuses a lot on consumer empathy. Innovation can be process technology focused. It also focuses on implementation. The common elements are, innovation and design thinking can both be customer focused. They both focus on value creation. They both focus on prototype piloting before you scale a solution at a commercial level. So I just wanted to clearly show how design thinking differentiates. As you can see, in a way, design thinking can actually act as a catalyst for innovation for problems that are more human-centric or more consumer-centric. So what you see on the slide here is that the bottom two phases, implement and evaluate benefits, are more innovation-oriented, while those that are within the blue bubble or a blue ellipse, oval bubble, they are more, again, if you look at it, they very much adapt to the design thinking D School's framework, but it's a bit more elaborate so that we can actually go into the details of each and every phase as needed. So there are 7 phases in this view of design thinking. The first activity is called discovery. There are 2 parts to it, or there are 2 phases inside discovery. The first phase is called gaining the deep understanding of the situation. Second thing is defining the problem statement. So that is what we call as discovery. After discovery comes in, actually it forks into 2 parts. One part is determining the design success criteria, which will be used later. The other part is defining or generating ideas on the problem statement, evaluating and filtering the ideas, and creating a prototype pilot. A prototype pilot and the design success criteria will both converge in the test phase, where a go no go decision is made. The outcome of go no go, as you can see, if it's go, goes towards implementation and evaluation of the benefits of the organization's investment, while the no go can go anywhere, back to generation of ideas, can go back to the prototype if it's a minor edit. Sometimes it could even go back to the discovery phase for better customer empathy if needed. So this is a broader level. So as you can see, there are 7 parts to it, 7 phases. First phase is gaining a deep understanding of the situation. The second phase is defining the problem statement. The third phase is determining the design success criteria. Then the fourth phase is generation of ideas. The fifth phase is evaluating and filtering the ideas. The sixth phase is prototyping the pilot. The seventh phase is decide go versus no go. Very much aligned to the D-school thinking, but a bit more detailed for people to apply in sequence. So the discovery phase, let's look at it in detail, which is gaining a deep understanding of the situation and defining the problem statement. Gaining a deep understanding of the situation. So as we saw before, the focus of this phase is to go beyond the surface level needs. By surface level needs, what we mean is what customers say and what customers do. But beyond what customers say and do, there is something that is more close to their heart or close to their brain, which is not usually seen at the surface level, which is what they think and what they feel, what consumers think and feel. Sometimes what consumers say is not what they think. What consumers do may not be really what they feel. And in this phase, it's important to go beyond the say and do activity data to more deeper on what they think versus what they feel. So, how can you actually do this? This can actually be done only by observing the consumers on what they do. By observing, or empathizing, what we mean is don't just go by what they say versus what they do. Look at their facial reactions. Sometimes people get grumpy and still do things. So this is how you actually look at their facial reactions, the body language, or sometimes actually by doing what they are doing. So it gives a good idea of mimicking what they do, so you can relate to and get as many data as possible beyond the surface level needs. That is beyond say, do to think and feel. And there are 3 high-level techniques that are available to actually do this. The first technique is called the ethnographic research. The second one is called the journey mapping. The third technique is called WBGA, or wouldn't it be great if statement techniques. Ethnographic research is the study of people in their own environment through use of methods such as observation and face-to-face interviewing. So things that we saw before, closely working with them, looking at their body reactions, going to the consumers' workplace or their place, and then trying to understand their real needs, and then observe them and do some interviewing in between to collect as many data as possible. This is one way of doing things. The other technique is called journey mapping. It's usually useful to assess an organization's ability to solve the needs of their customers. So if you look at it right with an example, there are 2 functions at a high level which usually interacts with customers. One is the sales function, other one is the customer support or the operations support group. So both these functions, sales group and the support group, are in 2 different organizations, or they belong to 2 different functions, and they operate in silos. From a customer standpoint, there can be a huge difference in the way a salesman spoke versus what the support team spoke, or even within support there could be multiple subsections as well. Each group can talk in 3 different ways. For example, if you take insurance, policy. Insurance is about policy contracts. So policy extension is one support group. Claims processing is another group. Policy extension group could be more effective in trying to reach out to the consumers, while the claims group may not be. It depends, or there could be differences in the way each group actually operates. So a journey mapping is a way to actually look at an organization's operations from a customer's end user's point of view. So in the verticals could be or the columns could be different functions, and the horizontals could be the different activities. And then as the image shows, there could be happy smileys versus smart smileys versus neutral smileys to show how customers react or how the customers experiences from interacting with different functions. So by doing this analysis, it's very easy to understand where the shortcomings are, which is good, which is not so good, for an organization to improve their processes. The third technique is called WBGA. WBGA stands for Wouldn't It Be Great If? So this technique is slightly different from the other two in the sense this doesn't talk about the current state, but it actually talks about the aspirational or the target state of consumers. So the way it's usually done is as a statement or as a question is asked to the consumers. For example, for better utility of say our product or service, wouldn't it be great if, and ask consumers to fill them up. Take a better statement if you want. I mean, the objective is to take a problem area and then say, wouldn't it be great if? It could be even used within your teams for better satisfaction of the team members within a project. Wouldn't it be great if? For better motivation of the employees within an organization. Wouldn't it be great if? So examples like this, when people start filling in the answers to the statement, it directs all emotions in a positive side. Because we talk about the future, it helps understand the wishes of consumers so that it can be turned into reality. It's very aspirational oriented. This can also be a way to understand the aspirations of a consumer rather than talking about the setbacks, just the setbacks of the current phase. So at a high level, these are the three tools that can be used, which can help one to go beyond the surface level needs of a consumer to the more inner needs or empathize better with the consumers. After this phase, the second part of gaining a deep understanding is to synthesize the findings. There could be huge amount of data that is collected, and there is a lot of intangible information that also resides with us who are part of the design challenge and who interacted with the consumers a lot. So it's very important to gather and analyze all the data received, both positive and negative. A quick way to do this or a technique to do this is to segregate verbs and nouns. So when we interact with customers, we get verbs, adverbs, one kind of data, nouns and adjectives as another type of data. And if there are multiple consumers, group all the data from all customers and see if there are any common themes that come out of these. Let's do a quick example on what it means to segregate verbs and nouns. So let's take this example of a statement that is taken from a customer or from an employee at work. So the employee says, often I feel sleepy and exhausted. At some time I feel, say 11, 12, whatever be it, I feel like hogging at this time and work gets depressing. I wish there were many breaks in between. So this is the kind of data that was given to you. So on this data, a quick solution is to draw two different colors, just circle them, circle the verbs, circle the nouns out. Sleepy, exhausted, hogging, depressing, they are probably now verbs. And then things like breaks is probably a noun. I need more breaks. Sometimes sometimes you may not even get this data, but based on the way you interacted with the consumers and the way the consumers were giving the information to you, you can make out a few more nouns. Things like they didn't feel much engaged. There was a lot of stress that the employees were facing probably, and they were not active always. There were moments when people were very tired. So some other nouns can also be collected through this phase. So synthesize finding is all about segregating the verbs, segregating the nouns, and keeping them separate. Once this is done, a mind map could be a good way to picturize all of this information in a good way for people to start analyzing better. So there are different ways of doing mind maps, by the way. So the way that we suggest over here, or that I suggest over here, is the verbs become the lines, okay, different directions or different arrows that goes to the basic need, while the clouds, which are superficial across the territory, they become the nouns. So you can see here, I feel sleepy and exhausted and work gets depressing, I feel like hogging. So depressed is a verb, No engagement is probably the noun related to it. There could be more than one mapping as well. Exhausted is a verb, no breaks and tiring could be the two nouns. Hogging is a verb, stressed and hungry could be the two nouns. So this kind of gives a good way to actually go back and find out what is the real need of this customer. So if by looking at this three different work area, right, depressed, exhausted, I feel like hogging sometimes, the real need of this customer probably is a better work culture or a better working style. By work culture I mean a working style, a work type, or working timings. Could be anything, but a work culture is probably what the employees in this organization maybe needs. So a good way to actually find out the real need of a problem. The way to achieve the needs from these verbs is by asking questions like why or so what. So you ask again and again why people feel depressed or so what. So maybe you will be able to hit the needs. If it was a broader set of consumers, more variety of information collected, maybe there are multiple needs that also come out. Maybe there are 3 or 4 problem statements that could be defined out of this. So as you can see, data collected through these techniques are then synthesized into verbs and nouns and then converted into a mind map of this sort to actually identify the real needs of the consumers, which can be used further to develop a problem statement. So defining a problem statement is based on the needs. The problem statement again should be very open-minded, and it has to be open-ended, and it has to be broad to solicit creative ideas, because that's what we saw. Problem statement should have very limited or no constraints at all as part of a problem statement. Sometimes it's very easy to create a constraint in a problem statement. Instead of calling it as how can we define a better work culture, if you instead define a problem statement as how can we change the timings of this company, something of this sort, then actually you are pushing an idea into a problem statement. So timing could be probably one factor of a work culture. Work timings is probably one aspect of a work culture. By pushing in work timing into a problem statement, there is a chance that you are shifting away from a broader problem statement into a narrow-minded solution mode. So it's very important that the problem statement does not carry any constraint at all. And the suggested way to start a problem statement is to start off as how might we. So this is this is not directional because of the word of might, and it's not it sounds very inclusive because we are saying we. So it's not saying it's your problem. We are calling it as our problem. So how might we improve the work culture of this organization or something of that sort, so that it becomes very open-minded and it's very inclusive, and it invites everyone to actually come up with a solution. So this is the problem definition state. After problem defining, some examples of problem statements. A narrow problem statement example would be how can we increase the sales for the next year. It's very narrow because it talks about I need to increase the sales. A broader problem statement that is more applicable for design challenges, how can we engage better with our customers going forward? Because a better customer engagement can result in more sales, either by getting newer customers or even by getting repeated customers. So it creates, and it also broadens the problem of what are the problems related to the sales of our product and service at this time. Similarly, from an SDLC standpoint, how do we reduce the number of defects in a release cycle? It should be translated into a much broader problem. How do we improve the overall performance of a release? And suddenly, when we move away from defects to a performance, there are many other factors that actually come into play. How do I improve the productivity of my team is very narrow-minded. How do I create a passionate and motivated team is probably more broader. Personally, a personal problem statement, a narrow problem statement is what is the best gift for my spouse or kid. Well, a broader problem can be how can I enhance the gift receiving experience for my spouse or kid, or for anyone, parent or anyone, or for a friend. Another problem statement, narrow, is how do I improve the performance of my washing machine? While a broader statement is how do I reduce the maintenance need of my clothes? So it takes the needs to a completely different level. So some good examples to show the difference between narrow versus broad problem statements for people, so that the outcome of the discovery phase results in a much better problem statement that can be used to create many ideas and and a great solution that can create wow in the minds of the customers. So after the discovery phase, a discovery stage which has two phases, next step is to determine the design success criteria. Design success criteria is a set of conditions or requirements that the solution needs to address in order for it to be successful. So once a prototype is created, this design success criteria acts as the first layer of checking whether the solution is successful or not so successful. How do we arrive at the design success criteria? We arrive at the design success criteria from the mind map. You look at all these clouds, the periphery, they in a way kind of become the design success criteria. Your final solution in this case of a work culture has to be engaging with the consumers at all times. It has to have adequate breaks, or it should solve the problem of no breaks. It should not make people tired. It should not make people stressed and hungry at any point of time. So good way to arrive at the design success criteria is to go back to this mind map and take these clouds or nouns and convert them into the success criteria statements. Does it make sense so far? Okay. I'll go forward. The next step after this is to, as we saw in the design challenge, this framework, we have covered the discovery and the design success. Now it's to generation of ideas, evaluating and filtering the ideas, and creation of prototype or pilot. So we'll look at these three phases one after the other now. Generation of ideas. There are many techniques available. Brainstorming, brainwriting, brain framing is one technique. And then these are techniques like contradiction, multi-screen thinking, Tongs and Hill model. They are actually techniques that I usually use, or I have adapted them from a technique called TRIZ. TRIZ stands for T-R-I-Z. TRIZ is a Russian acronym for Theory of Inventive Problem Solving. So it was created by a person called Altshuler. So this person was working on. He was working for the Russian Patent Office, and he did a lot of analysis on how patents were created, how did they arrive at this, and he came up with a model to systematically arrive at a solution if the problem is very concrete or very narrow-minded. So I thought I will sometimes, when we get into the prototypes and go back to the prototypes and trying to solve, there is a little bit of converging that happens on the different ideas. So maybe these techniques could be of use. But brainstorming, brainwriting, and brain framing, they are usually the three techniques that are used for divergent. They are usually called divergent techniques because they help you create a lot of ideas. Quantity matters, quality doesn't matter. The objective is to think laterally and come up with as many ideas as possible. Brainstorming, almost everyone knows what is brainstorm. Brainstorm is a technique where a group of people sit and discuss with an open mind. Brainwriting is very similar to brainstorming, just that people don't talk. People usually, the participants take a piece of paper and then they start writing. So that the setback of brainstorming where one's idea can get turned down by the other doesn't happen in brainwriting, because everyone sits and writes. After everyone has written in a sheet of paper, they share their papers across the teams. The usual technique that happens is the paper goes in a either in a counterclockwise or clockwise direction. You just share and push it to the next person who's to the left or right of you, and then you continue looking at the other ideas and then write more and more. So that's brainwriting. Brain framing is a technique where you actually change your frame of mind. For example, when you're in a problem statement, you change your reference of mind by thinking, what would I be doing if I had solved this problem? And then ask yourself this question, can I do that straight away now? So by doing this, you're actually trying to avoid this problem altogether. If your objective is what you want to do after problem solving, that's one way. The other technique probably is look at some of your idols or creative heroes. What would they be doing in such situation? Think creatively if you put superheroes in your mind, and then come up with different ideas. So that's brain framing. So we can't get into these stress techniques because that will take an entire day or two by itself. But I just wanted to give these ideas to you so that you can do further research as you need. And then there are many more techniques available as well. Segmenting a problem into subcomponents and then solving them. and things like that. So there are many more techniques, but the idea is to use your creativity, think laterally. Lateral thinking could be another means to come up with ideas. Don't short your ideas, don't evaluate your ideas when you are actually creating ideas. Just keep creating the ideas based on the problem statement. Just focus on the quantity. That's the importance of this phase. After this phase comes in the evaluation phase, where the ideas are evaluated. There are two parts, there are two ways. There are many ideas, say 1000 ideas or 500 ideas, then techniques like quadrant mapping and anonymous voting are of use. If the ideas are very few and you have to select one or two from them, then detailed techniques like pro-con analysis, cost-benefit analysis can be used. So they are more detail oriented. A quadrant mapping is a technique where there are two, imagine, two axes. One axis is called effectiveness of the solution, where to what extent it will solve your problem. The other axis is feasibility, is the solution really feasible, and rate every idea on these two quadrants. And then those ideas that are rated high on both effectiveness and feasibility, they are the ideas probably that are chosen for final evaluation or for prototypes. Anonymous voting, as it describes, is call everyone into a meeting room and ask everyone to pick 10 ideas out of say 100 or 200, and then consolidate them and then come up with a final list that can be used for final evaluation. So that's this phase. The next phase is on the shortlisted ideas. The focus is on developing a prototype. A prototype is a preliminary model. It's an experiment of a solution. It's a very simple model, something that is used to show and talk about to the consumers or to the stakeholders. They are not, they avoid spending a lot of time, they are supposed to help you prevent investment of time and money in an area that may not solve the user's needs, because you're still trying, you're still evaluating, you're still testing, you still need to test it. So prototypes are meant to be simple and cheap. As I said, even a simple skit can be useful, can be a useful prototype. The prototypes are used as a means to enable conversations with the end users on an idea and elicit specific feedback. So you can see it's not to show how great your solution is, it's actually to show an idea and elicit feedback. And as I said, majority of the prototypes fail. Don't get emotionally attached to any of your prototypes. Be ready to accept failure. Once prototypes are created, the next step is to validate these prototypes against the design success criteria and validating it against the end users. There are two techniques that can be used. One is called the weighted ranking technique and the other one is evaluation matrix technique. Very related to each other. Weighted ranking is, we have already defined a set of design success criteria. So define a weightage for each of these criteria. The sum of all these weightage should be 100%. So for every prototype that is created, evaluate the prototype against each of those criteria on a scale of say 1 to 5 or 0 to 5. Once you have rated them on a scale of 1 to 5, do a sum product, like 1 into my first success criteria weightage is 20%, so 1 into 20%, 5 into 30%, something, and then you sum them up. The total score becomes your final rating of that prototype. Evaluation matrix is very similar, just that it's very subjective in nature. Instead of a scale of 1 to 5, we use qualitative techniques like low, medium, high, or Harvey balls, quarter, half, 3/4, something of that sort, where we can't really rate the ideas, and we believe rating an idea can result in unnecessary conversations. If there are potential chances that when we try to evaluate ideas, there are conflicting positions that can happen in a group discussion. In such situations, 6 thinking hats is a good technique that could be used. It was devised by a person called Edward D. Bono, and the focus is on this technique is based on the concept of parallel thinking, and it helps you avoid conflicts in a group discussion. I will let you all do the research on 6 thinking hats by yourself. But at a high level, these are the 7 phases of design thinking, and there are multiple techniques that could be used in the process of solving a design challenge. And this phase brings to the end of the design challenge 7 phases. Any questions so far? Okay. Adapting to the design thinking way of problem solving. So just like in IT, when waterfall was being traditionally used, and when Scrum came, it was very easy. It's a very simple framework, but very difficult to apply because it was radically different. Something very similar. Design thinking is a very easy framework, but very difficult to apply because it is radically different from a conventional working style. See, for example, letting go of traits such as control, efficiency, not accepting failure, is usually something that has been carried on for many years in an organization. It's not going to be easy, straightforward, because they are the very basic elements of design thinking. Also, not all problems can be solved using design thinking. Don't force fit and say, I'm going to do design thinking to improve my payment interface or something of that sort. Only specific problems can be used for design thinking. Start small. Okay, learn and practice. As you saw, as we saw in the empathize phase, where there is a lot of focus on getting beyond the superficial or the surface level needs of the customer. It's not an easy activity. It takes a lot of practice and effort to get big at it. So start small, learn and practice to become better at it first before going big bang. For example, now that you've understood the concepts of design thinking at a high level, you can probably, whenever you go and talk to a customer for the next time, maybe try using one of these techniques at a very small level, at a very small scale. Someone whom you know probably much better, with your team members or with your boss or with your peer, whoever it be. Start applying it and see the results for yourself, and start to learn slowly. And by the time, after some time, before you realize, you would have actually started applying the 5-phase framework or the design thinking catalyst, so 7-step framework, in your mind, and then you would start becoming very adept at doing this. This is what I also did at Cognizant. First time I learned these techniques, I actually put it to use to my team. As a manager, I actually asked my team for better satisfaction of my team members. Wouldn't it be great if? And I actually asked their ideas. And if you look at it, most of their aspirations, not their ideas, most of their aspirations is something that we already knew. But having received the information from them and then going through an ideation phase to solve and then giving it back to them has a much better experience and creates a much better satisfaction in the minds of the team members and on us as stakeholders as well, rather than making assumptions that this is what they want and going forward with it. So start small, learn and practice to become better at it before going big bang in an organization, because it's not going to be easy unless there is a buy-in from the seniors within the organization that they would want to go ahead with it. Finally, I would want to again iterate on 3 key points of a design challenge. A design challenge has to be fast and iterative. You can't take 6 months on a design challenge. A design challenge is usually 3 months or less than 3 months in time. Be open-minded, change your decision based on feedback. Don't start off with a preempted solution in your head and then force fit the solution through a design challenge. There is a tendency that can happen sometimes in one's mind. Be open-minded, change your design, change your ideas based on feedback. Third, most important, be open for failure. Fail fast, fail early, fail cheap. Learn from mistakes. Because the objective is to create wow in the minds of the consumers. The objective is not to be successful with each of the prototypes that is being generated. A great asset, design thinking is a great asset to have in your toolkit. What I have tried to put here is a set of tools or set of techniques that a business analyst usually has. Elicitation techniques, stakeholder engagement, market research, planning and reporting, creating of documents and reports, problem root cause analysis techniques, different modeling techniques. So there are various modeling techniques. These are the various tools and techniques that are used by business analysts. And design thinking can actually be used in bits and pieces. The concepts of design thinking can actually be used in bits and pieces in multiple areas over here, because a business analyst is a role which is a critical role, because they are the ones who interact a lot with the consumers, and their role is to convert the needs of the consumers into a set of requirements which can be then further developed by the technology or the implementation team or by the solutions team. and they are the key players who play a major role. So by business analysts have a great opportunity to apply concepts of design thinking in their processes and in their activities. Things like elicitation techniques. See, at a very short, you can probably try at a very simpler level to see if the basic needs of the consumers beyond the surface level can be arrived at in some means or the other by going beyond the traditional ways of elicitation techniques. Stakeholder engagement. How can you engage with the stakeholders much better than what you do before? By empathizing with them much better and giving them much faster and quicker feedback, and keep engaging with them as needed rather than waiting until the last minute. Problem root cause analysis techniques. Techniques from TRIS can actually be used. Contradiction, hilltop model, Tong's model, they can be probably used for some root cause analysis as well, and for problem resolving as well. Or you can even use that problem statement can be converted into a campaign, and ideas could be solicited on how it can be avoided going forward as well. Basically, we are taking the the idea evaluation and idea creation and shortlisting of ideas, that part alone out of the framework, and apply it as needed. As you can see, design thinking is a very flexible and a good framework. The crux of it is very simple. How can we create a solution that really solves the end user's needs? That's it. And whatever techniques, whatever process, whatever rules that you use, as long as it is done, then design thinking, you've kind of adopted design thinking. For those who are new to design thinking, who would want to understand, for them, these techniques are really useful. This structured methodology will help you go there quickly. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover in this. Some good examples from the industry before I go back to the question and answers is a very good example of design thinking is or applying design thinking is the product Apple. Apple, we all know Apple always comes up with very cool products. Right from the Apple computer to iPods to the iPhones, they are always famous for it. And Apple always, took pride on saying that they really knew what the consumers wanted. And the basic problem statement that was taken within Apple was technology should help users, not make them look stupid or feel like stupid before people. That's probably the crux of things. And Apple's products are always characterized by simplicity in design and use, so that people don't feel stupid using a technology product or solution. So another example of design thinking is, I would say two companies, Whirlpool and P&G. Both these two companies, at the beginning of the 21st century, in 2000s or late 1990s or early 2000s, they had started experiencing flat revenues on some of their marquee products, were also not selling really well. That's when they both started focusing on and launched a program. They didn't really call it as design thinking at that point of time, but they launched a program to bring in. Whirlpool called it as launching a program to identify the real needs of the consumers, and they created a framework. P&G called it as a program to bring in outside-in innovation. Outside-in, if you look at it, it's more of what are the customers need, so that I bring in. So at the end of all these frameworks that they brought in, the real solution was they started creating newer products and newer solutions. For example, Whirlpool in US created products like Gladiator GarageWorks, Afresh, Eco House water filter leasing, and KitchenAid small appliances. Some examples. They started, you can even go and search in the internet, Whirlpool innovation, you'll get a lot of good articles. Similarly, P&G as well. Their revamped versions of Crest, which is their toothpaste, Tide, which increase their revenue going forward. Maybe these are good case studies for you to actually go and do research for yourself to understand how design thinking was actually followed within organizations. Very good case studies are already available in the internet. I would actually suggest that you go and read them. Nike is the other one, known for introducing products targeting sportspersons' needs. Shocks technology, Nike Air, Nike Plus. So these are some new products that they created. So what I've given you today is just an introduction of what is design thinking and a whole list of tools and techniques that can be used. I have opened up a box of opportunities for you to go back and do more research, understand more of each of it, and then try applying it as needed within your organizations. Start simple, start easy, and then try to grow and get better at it as you progress along. And by the way, Velicate Technologies is organizing workshop, a public workshop on May 20th and May 21st. So the website is www.velicatech.com. Feel free to nominate yourself. This is going to be in Bangalore. If you want to proceed further, feel free. And these 2-day workshop, we will probably go more of what it means to be a design challenge and make people go through the design challenge completely. And that brings us to the end of this question. I'll go back to the messages here from Upender. I understood design thinking implementation model as a simple way: think big, start small, fail quickly, and scale fast. Yes, you're right. Design thinking is all about, well, what you've written here is some of the key things to consider while doing a design challenge. But design thinking implementation, you are right. A simple way: think big, start small, fail quickly, scale fast. They are absolutely right. And design thinking implementation model should also focus on a target that aspect. Another question: design thinking can only be used in agile projects and not in waterfall projects, where scope evaluation, scope effort, and solution direction is predetermined. Correct. Yeah, in a way, it's correct, because the agile framework is established in a way that it helps you go back to the product or the stakeholders in a very short span of time, say 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So agile helps you or gives you a framework which enables you to do this very fast. So design thinking is about doing fast. Agile helps you do this very fast. So it's very suited in an agile environment because it has to be agile in a way. While waterfall projects are more inside out. I mean, I know what I want, so I'm going to do it slowly, steadily, phase by phase, and then I'll give you a big bang final solution at the end. You are right, but implementation is different. Okay, this is where I would want to take a step and then explain it. The design thinking ends at a prototype, while we don't actually implement something in full scale. Okay, what we are trying to do in a design challenge is to solve a problem and show of a consumer and show how we would actually solve it with a very basic prototype or a simpler model. So for that, agile model is used. While we get into implementation part of it, say a solution has been created, it's become it was found to be very useful. Now you'll have to implement it at scale and then deploy it, use it. I mean, it depends. You could use both agile as well as waterfall model. It purely depends on the company's style. While coming up with the 5 phases or the 7 phases: discovery, which is 2 parts; design success criteria, evaluating the ideas up to the decide go no go decision. That has to be done in an agile way, very short and quick fired way. I hope it makes sense. Third question: as you mentioned, fulfilling user needs as simple as, but in design thinking model, is there any time bound? The thumb rule is don't take more than 100 days. Okay, if you look at the Whirlpool's model, they actually had a technique or they had a 100-day plan. People who came up with a new solution to solve a customer's needs, they were given a 100-day to actually implement a prototype and come back to them to show how this will solve the user's problem. Because as I said, the idea is to be fast and avoid unnecessary time and investment on an area which may not really solve the user's needs. So maximum 3 months, not more than that, is what I would suggest. And design thinking is not implementation. It stops with prototyping and developing and testing the prototype to see if it would solve. If you're trying to revamp a process, so the objective ends with a simple skit, for example, and the simple skit will actually show you how the process works, not a detailed. It doesn't have to be a detailed business process model diagram. It could be even a simple skit to show how it would work and get an idea of how effective this kit will be from the skit can have customers, the skit can have each process named by different people, and you can actually show how you would actually solve it, and then solicit feedback from customers and from stakeholders on is it really solving their problem before you implement it in scale. Sometimes people even run a pilot. A process kit is completed, preliminary process is formed, and then not scaled at full level within the organization, but piloted at few simple areas to get feedback. And once the feedback is received, then implementing it at scale happens. Let's take even our government example of piloting daily, everyday petrol diesel price hike. This is piloted only at 5 or 6 cities, not everywhere. And this is a new technique aimed at solving consumers' needs. The basic consumer need is I don't want to be every 2 weeks there's a steep hike, 5 rupees, 10 rupees. If it was a daily hike, maybe it's easy for people to absorb the increase in cost. So that's probably a design challenge that was in their head. And a pilot has been created to see how effective it would be. If it's not effective, maybe it's not really solving the people's needs. Maybe they'll go back and change the solution altogether. But you get it right. The importance of piloting versus and prototyping before it's implemented in full scale. Because implementing in full scale requires a lot of changes. It requires a full-fledged change management to come into play and a project management to come into play as well. Any other questions? We have gone beyond the stipulated time. Apologies for delays, and I hope you all found this session to be interesting. We will be sharing this video in the YouTube channel as well, so that you can always go back and refer to this video. Unfortunately, the original portions of this video were not included, but I hope this will help you all in being much more customer centric, or probably gives you better and better or much better, let's say, lot of tools in your toolkit that can be used for you going forward in your organizations, or whenever you interact with your customers going forward. I'll probably give another couple of minutes to see if there are any more questions, or we can log off. So as I said, design thinking is a great methodology. What we saw today is just the tip of the iceberg. With practice and experience alone, you will be able to master this technique and make design thinking as your new style of working going forward. If there aren't any more questions, maybe we can all log off. I once again thank you all for this session, and thanks to the IAB HNI chapter for hosting the session, and I hope we'll get a chance to connect again in the future, if not for design thinking, on any other areas as well. Thanks a lot. Thank you everyone. Bye. Good night.